Welcome back to Breakfast Central. Now let's take you to the newspapers this morning, share with you the big stories making headlines across the country. We're kicking off on the Daily Trust newspapers this morning. Big story there says, I inherited serious liabilities from my predecessors like clockwork. Everybody says this. Everybody says this. Buhari said this thing for at least 4 years. They almost, of course, continued saying it in his 5th year of office, but nobody, wanted to hear it. It was almost the same thing when they were talking about 16 years of PDP and 16 years of PDP. But at some point, Nigerians were tired of those, excuses. So yes, everybody says this, gives this same excuse. But of course, my question will be, did you not know the situation on ground when you promised that you were going to continue from, where he stopped? I'm sure you did. So it shouldn't be an excuse, and nobody should, I don't think any Nigerian whatsoever should, cut the government any slack and and be willing to suffer more because they, are claiming that they inherited liabilities from the previous government. You promised to fix it. You knew the situation on ground and you promised to fix it. So I don't expect that anybody is buying this either. No magic wand for economic crisis, says the CBN governor. Well, once again, these are signs, or they sound rather like signs that the government, is almost telling you that, they may not be able to solve the problems that they promised to solve, that they, asked for the mandates to solve. Federal government has run out of ideas, says an economist. Hoarders, speculators responsible for forex crisis. Okay. Navy combs Lagos waters, intercepts boat carrying 90 drums of PMS. Will tap into $2 trillion Islamic finance market, says the federal government. And also, labor strike cripples activities in Abuja and other states. Union leaders chase out non-compliant workers. BUK suspends exams, hospitals, banks, courts, shut. Also on the Daily Trust this morning. Passengers evacuated as Port Harcourt-bound aircraft overshoots runway. And Article 6 merger of opposition parties to checkmate the APC. Anxiety in Kano and Plateau ahead of appeal court judgments. Yes, we did speak a little bit about the, the concept of a merger earlier. Some people might argue that it's coming too little, too late, and they don't expect that a lot of, the other political parties would be very interested in any merger. Because what mergers are we talking about here? We're talking about Labour Party, or the NNPP? Are we talking about the SDP? Because a lot of these political parties they don't have a national spread the same way that the PDP and the Labour Party, reasonably Labour Party currently have. A lot of them, are really just only relevant in certain states. For example, the SDP, I don't think it has that much of a spread. ABGA also doesn't have that much of a spread. So, what kind of merger, what might we be talking about here? And also, is it a merger gearing towards 2027? Is that what, the article book is referring to? And if it is geared towards 2027, do they understand what it means and why the Nigerian people would be interested in any mergers? Because there was opportunities for these things to come together in the past. And in the first place, I think people would even argue that there wasn't even any need for these parties to be separated in the first place. It was because, one party couldn't put his house in order, that this person broke out and that person broke out and eventually formed their own political parties. And one of them was able to do exceptionally well in 9 months. Unprecedented. In Nigeria's history, it has never happened. I don't think it has ever happened in the whole continent's history. That in 9 months, you will, do that well in an election. So yeah, do the issues that people had pointed out in the past, do they still exist in the party that now is calling for a merger? I don't know.
But they had opportunities really before the elections to merge. They didn't take it now. It seems like, okay, we've lost. We don't have any other options. Now let's
merge. And of course, remember that, we're talking about 2027, which is the next time that you might have, a chance of an election. Nobody knows what will happen in the next 4 years, where these, parties will go on the strength of these parties in the next 4 years. We'll see. Anyway, those are the stories on the Daily Trust newspapers this morning.
All right. Now let's move away from Daily Trust to the Punch and punch you with the Punch headlines. On the front page of the Punch, Ajairo's alleged assaults. Federal government knocks labor strike. Records, I'll take that again. Federal government knocks labor strike, records partial compliance. Tinubu not behind attack on Ajaero. Escalating strike nationwide unreasonable, says AGF office. Lagos, Rivers, Kwara, Bauchi workers share labor, Kano, Edo, Delta, Akwa Ibom, others comply. So it's a divided country. Some people in support, some people against. 35 million naira needed to return body of Nigerian student, according to the ministry. This story, I haven't been following up with it. I will do some more research into it to find out exactly what this is about. Sacked agencies members sue Adeleke, demand 2 billion naira on page 29, I beg your pardon. Elections over, reform economy now, NPAN tells Tinubu. Well, that's an old conversation. CBN extends old Naira notes deadline indefinitely. Now, while I see the good in this, because to reduce the scarcity and reduce the hoarding that is already starting, right? Reducing the limit, banks have started putting withdrawal limits on cash, and people are already getting into some form of panic regarding accessibility to cash. So CBN has extended the old Naira notes deadline indefinitely. And I understand this, I understand this completely. But the question is, that former problem that we had that time, that Godwin Emefiele was governor of CBN, that we struggled to find Naira notes and that people died, people lost their lives. Why hasn't any investigation been done as to why that Naira policy was, why it failed so terribly and jeopardized the safety, security, health, and wellness of Nigerians? We don't have any report on that yet. We spent Nigerians' monies to be able to print these new notes to ensure that they got into circulation. So why don't we have any updates on that?
Because, the Nigerian government doesn't feel it's accountable to the people. Because if this happened, let's bring this down to a regular, business level. If this happened in some organization, some company here in Lagos, in the Federal Capital Territory, wherever, that level of failure happened with a project that they were, meant to be handling, people will be fired. People will be queried heavily, and people will be fired. But the Nigerian government doesn't act like it feels, it has any accountability to the Nigerian people. And that's why when things happen, when things, people fail on a level that massive, they still do not feel like anybody should be questioned or anybody should be able to answer any questions. And I'm talking about, it's across board. And that's why you barely ever see anybody get fired. You barely see anybody get replaced or anybody get suspended. Nothing happens in the Nigerian government. Once a person gets an appointment, they run through those 4 years or 5 years or 8 years of that time that they've been appointed, regardless of what their performance is like. No minister in the previous administration was fired because of failure to deliver on their set targets or KPIs. I'm talking about education, I'm talking about sports, I'm talking about tourism. In fact, we almost do not have a tourism ministry because there's almost no conversations on tourism. I'm talking about, the economy, where in every single health, infrastructure, housing, there's nothing that anybody can say, okay, these are the KPIs that were set, and these ministers couldn't meet up with them, and so we have to let them go after 6 months or after 2 years. Nothing.
Right.
It was so bad that people, even after the government left power, you heard the Minister of Education then coming out to say that he knew that he wasn't the right fit for the job, or that the Buhari administration put square pegs in round holes and all of.
Yes.
They said it. Festus Keyamo even said it, that the ministry that he was handling was was unnecessary or something like. I don't remember how he said it, but that's why the CBN governor didn't get fired.
Final story on the Punch. Article canvasses merger to oust APC. Now, the thing is, when this merger happens, I wanted to ask, I did say it, but is he planning to still run for office again? Is he planning to still be president?
I'm not sure what.
Well, that's all that we can take on the Punch newspaper. Let's quickly squeeze in some headlines on the Tribune.
The Nigerian Tribune this morning says, Labour strike kicks off. Ports, schools, banks, National Assembly complex and others suffer. Train operations also affected. Serious compliance in Edo, Bauchi, Osun, Kogi, Imo and others. And also, article calls for opposition's measures to dislodge APC, once again slide to one-party dictatorship. OIC selects Nigeria's special delegate to halt Gaza conflict. Alleged 109 billion naira fraud. Court revokes ex-AGP Idris co-defendant's bail. And also, killer of Lagos lawma sweepers is a mechanic, says police investigation. It shocks me, how you can wake up in the morning on a random Tuesday, random Thursday, random Saturday morning, and not know that that day would be the end of your life, because somebody can be, running away from being, while being chased by police or chased by whoever it is, and knock you down in the middle of the street while you're just doing your job. Or you could be the person who decides that, when police officers are trying to stop you, or VIO or road safety or whoever it is, or LASMA was trying to stop you, that you don't want to stop. And so now you've thrown your life away, because you would very likely be getting a life sentence at least. Anyway, Nigerian woman sets record for world's longest wig making. And final story this morning, we inherited serious liabilities and assets, says President Tinubu. These are the stories on the Nigerian Tribune this morning. That's where we will be leaving it.